Good morning and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. Today with me is Mario Ubiali. Is that right? Did I do that?
That is perfectly right. You sounded very Italian. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. CEO and founder of Thimus. And this is part of our Future Food Tech series that we're doing to introduce you to some of the key speakers that will be at the conference. So we are so pleased to have you here today, Mario.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and it's very exciting. Any opportunity to try and talk about how neuroscience can help the future of food is such a welcome opportunity. So thanks again for this chance.
It's my pleasure, and I'm excited because I think that you have a little bit of a different take on things, and your perspective and your motivation is very different than a lot of the conversations I have. So for the folks watching or listening that are not familiar with Thimus, perhaps you could just give us a short synopsis of what it is that Thimus is.
Of course. And so without making it sound terrifying and terribly complicated at the same time, I would want to say that Thimus was born and is operating to better understand human relationship with food and interaction with food. So in a word, you could say human food experiences through the lens of neuroscience. And what really makes us stand out, or at least what we try to be very special with, is the way we mix neurophysiology, so neuroscience, the combination of different disciplines that goes into understanding brain functioning and brain reactions, and we mix that kind of hard science approach to neurophysiology with cultural studies and anthropological approaches. The result is a way, is almost like we have crafted a new lens. And now you can look at the nature of human relationship with food through this kind of very innovative lens, which explains a lot about the implicit, the emotional, and all of those hidden processes that we sort of either give for granted or think they're too complicated to be explored.
Wow. So the first question that comes to mind is, what is your background? I mean, between all those different things.
Okay, I gotta say, my background is the most, I want to say the most distant from neuroscience, so that we can dispel any idea that an entrepreneur who is pushing cultural neuroscience might be a neuroscientist himself. I am not. I am an entrepreneur who comes from innovation and family entrepreneurship since 3 generations. I was born and raised in Italy, and to no surprise, I guess, I am a philosophy major, and I have a master in human development and sustainability. So before you actually think that we're just selling snakes oil at Thimus, actually my job is to make sure that the team of people who work around me do maintain my vision, but at the same time, their competence. And so before people freak out and think that I'm really actually leading neuroscience projects, it's a team of cognitive neuroscientists, biomedical engineers, data scientists, anthropologists, sensory experts who work in Thimus, at Thimus, and for Thimus. These are really the people who are making a difference and making it progress. What I contributed when I created the company was a very humanistic approach to this. And that's the beauty and the tension in a company like Thimus. It's the result of a combination of very hard science, very rigorous one for that matter, and a purpose that is driven by a certain vision of human beings and the future of food. So I guess my role is that crazy philosopher guy who wants to be the CEO and tries to set the vision for a bunch of much smarter people.
Well, you're the visionary. I mean, and as the visionary, it's your job to innovate and to come up with these brilliant ideas, and then to surround yourself with the people around you that know a little bit more and can make it all happen.
That's precisely. Thank you for saying that. I should probably reuse what you just said, by the way. But no, it's a fantastic alchemy, by the way, when it works. You have the bad days, you have the good days, right? But on a good day, it's such an exciting and really amazing way of trying to make a difference, is to be working with all these smart, young, incredibly brilliant people from diverse backgrounds. It's amazing.
So what was it that sparked this interest to specifically have you come up with this brilliant idea, this innovative, this really thoughtful way of looking at the future of food?
Well, I think it's the real story. So without trying to embellish things too much, which we will be.
No, I want the real story. I want the real story.
So the real story is I was coming from 14 years in a completely different line of business. I had grown and developed a network of international small service companies in a completely unrelated field. And I was very expert on technological innovation and research and what it means to have a vision in technology and then turn that into a product or something that you can actually make a difference or an impact in corporate sort of world. I was coming from that. I was very lucky because I successfully managed to raise the interest of a multinational group. They came, approached me, and basically bought out what I had built. And so at one point in my career and life, I was like, okay, turning the page, what do I know? What is my skill set? And my skill set was partially, let's not blow our own trumpet too much, but I certainly had the skill set of building a successful business from scratch was my goal in life as a professional. And as an entrepreneur and an investor, I was approached by a person who was a friend at the time, and our ways have parted since then, but he came to me and said, have you ever looked at the opportunity of neuroscience being taken out of the labs and into corporate world? And long story short, I embraced that idea. We started out on a very simple level. And then during the pandemic, the peak of the pandemic, I made a decision that we needed to accelerate. And accelerating for me during the pandemic was, we must have a broader purpose. And that's where I realized that the greatest impact we could have with cultural neuroscience in corporate world could be in food and beverage. And why? Because food is such a nexus for human culture and emotions and nurturing and social dimensions. And so I thought, if we can make a difference in that, that's going to really be impactful. And this is where it really came along. So it's really a story of different steps and different stepping stones, if you will.
I think it's overlooked, I think, so much. We are focused very often on the health, which is important, and the planet, which is important, but why not include it all? Why not look at the cultural? Because I think that oftentimes there's different sets of groups that get overlooked because we're not inclusive. We're being exclusive, actually, by not being inclusive and thinking about all these different cultural groups, or these different people, different people, what they grew up with, what they know to eat. And as a result, we're saying this is what's healthy, but they've never known that, or they've never experienced that. And that's not within what their comfort zone is. That's not what they know to go to. So I think better understanding different cultural settings and what people have available to them and looking at it in a global perspective is going to allow the future of food to be a more inclusive way to look at things on a global level. So
I couldn't say it better than you just did. And I just want to complement that by sort of raising a couple of points, stuff that it's emerging from the kind of work that we're doing. On one end, I want to say, even though it might sound a little oversimplified, but I don't believe it is, if we have at heart the full sustainability of future food systems, right? The famous challenge of feeding 10 billion people, and then I believe the most logical consequence of that vision would be to make sure that we design food that is going to be embraced and welcomed by all human beings on the planet. If this is a planet issue, the one thing we definitely need to do is to have tools that will allow us to make food successful with so many diverse cultures, right? So to me, I always say the trick, when you start looking at the way the brain responds to food, you quickly realize that there is no such thing as the brain being rational about food. And as much as we like to think that humanity will convert to sustainable food because we're all good and nice and we want to save the planet, we all know then the juicy burger or the great seafood or whatever we want to point out as a cultural example will always come first emotionally for people. And so cultural neuroscience on one end, just to add to what you just said, in my opinion, is the tool that will allow the whole food chain to actually be successful. So we all want to transition to something more sustainable. I am worried that if you take sustainability without the hedonic component, you take pleasure away from sustainability. Those two pillars, they can only work together. If you take pleasure out of the equation, the whole table, the whole plane that you're trying to build falls. I want to add one aspect to that. Maybe that's going to spark some of your curiosity on this, but later studies we've done, for example, also indicate that it's even deeper and more complex than that. So there is an emergence of a correlation between how your brain reacts to a food experience and therefore likes or dislikes it, embraces it, or wants to get away from it. That is heavily influenced by your genes, a gene network approach to food liking in the brain has emerged as a recent thread of studies in some of the most advanced universities around the world. And at Thimus, we're trying to embrace that approach too. So all of a sudden now you see, we talk about saving the biodiversity of the planet, which I fully subscribe to. I don't think anyone wouldn't, but we have to start talking about biodiversity in humans. There is also a biodiversity in humans. It's the biodiversity of how humans have shaped themselves, their biology, their taste, their sensory abilities, their memories through centuries, if not millennia of history. And ignoring the bio and cultural diversity of humans, in my opinion, is really high risk game, because the game can only put in jeopardy diversity in humans. And so do we want to save the planet and effectively carry out an holocaust in terms of food cultures? Is that what we're trying to do? So
right.
That implication is very difficult to discuss, is very difficult to bring to the table, because it has political, economical, cultural implications. It's a touchy subject.
Touchy. It's very,
right?
very touchy. There's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of, there's one other thing I want to bring to the table, which, it sounds very banal maybe, but it's shame. And it's human behavior around this. And it's not complicated and it's not technical, but I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of shame around what people are eating and whether or not, where it comes from and how it's prepared and all these things. And then how, if you then go to, people's cultural foods, whether, I've lived in Mexico, I've lived in a variety of other places, and some places are much more forward and conscious, and some people, they don't, whether it's resources or knowledge or, maybe it's the way I make my food for my Jewish holidays and the lack of accessibility to certain things. But I feel like there's a lot of shame when it goes to being able to prepare or have access to create the things that I crave or I want to put forth to my family for those, that come from my roots. Does that make sense? So shame was just another thing that I wanted to add to the equation. And I know it's not technical or any of those things, but it is part of the equation, because I think that often, people shy away from those things because of it.
Essential Ingredients is powered by NextGen Chef. NextGen Chef is a movement that supports food and beverage entrepreneurs around the world by fostering a sense of community and providing its members access to mentors and a wealth of resources and guidance. NextGen Chef feeds members with the knowledge they need to build better for you food and beverage businesses, so the world can have greater access to healthier food, comprehensive food education, and increased affordability. If you like what you hear on this podcast, continue the conversation or ask new questions on the NextGen Chef app, available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Follow NextGen Chef on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. at Next Gen Chef. Join Next Gen Chef and let's change the future of the food industry together.
What tends to shock me as well is that we are not capable, perhaps enough, in the current debate on the future of food, to be honest and say how much of what we're talking about is Western-centric. Because I mean, let's be honest. If you take a flight to Central India and you approach a certain group of people there and you tell them, what do you think about being plant-based? They're going to look at you like are you out of your mind? Well, what are you talking about, right? So I guess one of the points that I think we need to raise more and more in the debate is being inclusive of the diversity of what food means to others. And I love that you talked about shame and because you know what? And you used another term, technical. See, the key to this is in the West, we're driving the debate about the future of food by, I want to say, overloading the topic with technologically driven terms. It's all about the 3D printing, the bioreactor,
it's intellectual. It's all intellectual, and it's nothing.
Where is the emotion?
Here. Where exactly?
Where is the emotion? So to me,
emotion and heart, and
to me,
food is all about heart too. So we got to connect the two. Exactly.
No, that's the reason why for somebody like us at Thimus, who constantly work on the emotion of food being measured scientifically, because we're not talking about us being all nice and naive and dancing around and trying to, extract readings from I don't know, the bottom of a teacup, right? This is neurophysiology intersected with genetics, intersected with sensory analysis. We're talking about stuff that is widely recognized as being fully valid on a scientific level. But the beauty of this is that science doesn't remove from the equation the implicit process, the emotional process. In fact, the beauty of what we're trying to do at Thimus is you want to push that to the forward part of the conversation. You want to say, guys, it's never going to work unless you take a look at this. It's almost like literally Thimus has been trying to tell the food world in the last 2 years, you should take a look at this. I always think of this like one of those Hollywood movies when there is this kind of weird scientist observing the stars in some remote place and he sees that there's a comet coming towards the Earth and he runs out in the other room and says, guys, you need to look at this. And nobody really listens to you at the beginning. Now it's moving along. People are starting to care. But I'm telling you, it's an uphill struggle sometimes.
I agree. So Mario, I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk. This is just a little bit of what everyone's going to get to hear from you at the Future Food Tech Conference. And I can't wait to hear more. So I'm curious, with all the innovation they're going to show and have, and all the speakers that will be at the Future Food Tech Conference, what are you excited to see there? What are you excited to learn?
I'm always excited. And the beauty of being excited about such a place and a conference is that you always end up learning something you were not expecting, something completely unexpected comes. So personally, I'm extremely excited about meeting the innovators and the real trailblazers whom I already partially know, rather, sometimes in person, sometimes just because you read about them. So it's exciting to see what's going on in their minds. What is the vision? What are the goals? How technology has evolved? Yes, of course, I'm always excited. We also need to keep that into consideration, right? It's not like you can ignore it or antagonize technology. I gotta be honest with you. I'm on the lookout for one specific thing, which is difficult to describe, but very relevant to me. How will the language be changed in comparison to other events that we attended earlier on in the year or last year or the year before? I'm always trying to have sensitive antennas to how the language is changing. For example, in the last few months, there's been a lot of transition to a semantic of full-blown experiences, keeping the identity of people more at the center of the equation, being more humanistic or human-centric. I love the fact that that language is kind of slowly floating to the surface and emerging. in the conversation. I am very curious to know how mainstream that is becoming in food innovation, because that would be a sign that something is really going in the right direction, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it'd be interesting to see how the narrative changes, the language changes, the vernacular. And, I'm hoping that through our conversations, we can demystify some of this stuff. We can answer some of those questions for people and make it more palatable so that everyone is included in this conversation and can understand what's going on, so that we're not always speaking at a higher level, but more at a level where everyone can participate, because that's the only way people can really make more informed choices, be part of the conversation, and really have access and choices to a better food system.
I have to tell you, I love that you have this purpose and goal for what you're doing, and I do hope that even in this tiny little opportunity that you're presenting with the big opportunity, but I'm a tiny little thinker here. But I would love for people to understand that there are companies such as ours and many others. It's not celebrating just us, who are really doing everything they can on a daily basis to raise the voice of the so-called common human being. There's no such thing as there used to be expressions about, the man from the street and that kind of expression. But I honestly believe when it comes to food experiences, it's stories, it's deep stories, it's diversity, it's social, it's memories. I mean, we've done this for 6 years now. I can assure you, ask anyone about food in a matter of maybe 60 seconds, they will be telling you some incredible story about when they were small kids, their grandma, their mother, whatever. There's always an emotional attachment. There's always that kind of color that comes into the thing. So food is such a profound place of transformation for humans that I do believe that it's a great opportunity to speak out on this. And I hope that I have this picture in my mind of some guy in Brooklyn or in Hanoi or in whatever, fixing his dinner or her dinner and hearing these voices. And I hope the message gets loud and clear to them. There are people in the food system who are really caring for who these people are. It's about safeguarding identities. I cannot say that enough. I don't want, my goal as an entrepreneur and my company's goal is, we do not want to lose that. We do not want to lose the diversification of food identities, because that would be erasing social and emotional lives, and that's just not fair.
I think the message here is we need this platform to have people speak up so that people can join the conversation, be part of the conversation, so that people can make more informed choices, so that the businesses and everyone can include the different cultures, the different conversations, the different emotions, the different information as part of the solution.
Absolutely. And this is absolutely no place, and not certainly my intention to be political, but not in a political sense. I want to say in a social and almost activism kind of dimension. I do believe that food provides us with an opportunity, a gigantic opportunity, which is we really can vote with our wallet, so to speak, when we go and purchase food. And we also can vote with our fork when we make choices about how healthy we want to be, but also how true we want to be to who we are. I go full circle back to what you mentioned earlier on. This is no time to feel shame about our identities and how we want to feel. And let's not cancel that. Let's make sure that also working with large corporations around the world, which is our daily life at Thimus, a lot of people come to us and say, you have transitioned to the dark side of the force. And it's like, no, I have not. I inhabit the world, and my team inhabits the world. And in the real world, if you want to be relevant and make a change, you have to be in that kind of wrestling thing where you are in the dynamics of the real companies. And what you can hope to do is to slowly influence them to think differently. And I can assure you, it's a lot better for me to obtain 1 inch of advantage and progress with a large food corporation than being somewhere outside the gated, domain of food and barking from the outside because I want to protest about something. I want to be in things and make sure that I try to make a difference. I know it sounds like sometimes we are a little too much in the fold, but there's no other way to do that.
No, I would agree. Mario, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to having you back after the conference to hear your update on what you saw, what you learned, and just keep following your progress on how things are progressing.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for listening to this.
Yeah, and don't forget, if you're at the Future Food Tech Conference, don't forget to check out Mario's talk.
We'll be there. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you so much.
To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Next Gen Chef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.